So I saw an interesting statement floating around online yesterday, and that is about the Xenoblade Pro Controller. Apparently, from really what I've seen online so far, people feel that the Xenoblade D-Pad is actually better than the regular Pro Controller's D-Pad. Now, just trying it out myself, I can pretty much agree with that. The D-Pad is better. It's not like a night and day difference, so if you're going out to buy this just because of the D-Pad, it might not be worth the $75, especially if you're upgrading from this one and you're just going to have two. Maybe you do want to and go get this one instead then. Or maybe you don't have a Pro Controller, in which case, yeah, pick the Xenoblade one up if you can find it. Now, we're going to open it up today. I wanted to take a look at the D-Pad and see what they've done and see if we can figure out how they've made it, I guess, slightly better, but not like completely better. And then I also have like a Super Nintendo classic D-Pad right here that we can kind of compare it to. So let me get these two guys apart and we'll take a look. Okay, so here are the two D-pads. It's pretty straightforward which one is which because the Xenoblade one has like the teal arrows here and the regular one just has the gray. So what would they do to make this different, to make it feel like it's not pressing all directions at once? I think what Nintendo is doing right now is they're playing around with the molding. Or here's the other theory, the molding just happened to be just slightly different. Like, we're talking millimeters here, guys, like, seriously, that small, that the D-pad has accidentally become better, or maybe this is just something, like I said, they're tinkering around with, and this could be in the new Pro Controllers going forward. But what they have done here is, we've talked about the little spike on the bottom, right? These guys here, these actually protrude out. You can kind of see that. The Xenoblade one appears to be slightly longer than the regular one. Like, if you actually take them and put them against each other here, kind of like this, where the spikes are touching away from each other, like offset, the Xenoblade D-pad actually still has space between because the spike is slightly longer. Now what that is going to do is it's going to make connection to the board through the rubber membrane sooner. So when you press down on the center where that spike is located, you can actually see it going through the rubber membrane there, it will hit the board sooner than this one would, right? So there's less travel when you press on the center, which means there's less travel when you press like right, left, or whatever that could accidentally hit up or down. That's how these work. That's why people were so critical of this D-pad, because that's pretty much an idea I remember Nintendo actually coming up with, was being able to do that. Like, if you look at their Super Nintendo controllers, I'm gonna put this down right here. If you look at their Super Nintendo controller D-pad, this is from the new Super Nintendo Classic. They have actually done the same effect, basically effect here. I think it might be using similar moldings to these guys, but because its rubber membrane is not as large as this one, and the travel isn't as far, it doesn't feel as bad. Nintendo's still trying to figure this one out. And if you look at something like this is an original Super Nintendo D-pad, the spike on the bottom is very wide. And the reason they do that is because the pivot exists in more of a rolling fashion. I'm trying to describe it as best I can. But when you press it, it's really hard to push down the center at all. Like, it has no travel. The rubber membrane is also smaller in that, though, so it contacts the board much faster when you push down on it. They're still working with it, but I can at least confirm that the Xenoblade D-pad is better to a degree. It's like this much better, right? It's not like a million times better. It's not like you're going to feel the difference completely and utterly. You will feel some difference, but it's not like night and day is what I'm trying to say. So if you don't have a Pro Controller, look for the Xenoblade one because it is a better D-pad overall, okay? But don't go out and just buy it to replace your current Pro Controller because it's not going to, it's not completely there yet. It's not the D-pad you are looking for if you're a big D-pad aficionado, okay? So I'm gonna put these back together, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today on a very lazy Sunday. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you joining me today. Hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully this gave you an idea of what happened with the D-pads inside these Pro Controllers and what could have happened with the Xenoblade controller. And, you know, we'll see going forward as more special editions come out. As this Pro Controller evolves, we'll see if it changes and if this D-pad becomes any better. I assume it only will. What they can do is they can, of course, either lengthen this spike just a little further, like we're talking millimeters, or they can shrink down the rubber membrane travel distance. That's something they can do because that's the barrier between really where the spike goes and how far it has to travel before it touches the board. Because as soon as it touches the board, you're not going to be pushing any further, right? So that's something to do. The NES one touches the board almost immediately. That's why the NES D-pad is considered like one of the best D-pads because of that. So thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video.